these vampires are not pretty. They are not lounging around in designer clothes and, eternally young.
And now let us begin with the strengths and weaknesses of the Strigoi, starting with the strengths and abilities, now that we're done with the heavy science of it all. We have fast healing, the proboscis, and its reach, its distance, its speed, the element of surprise around it, and how it's strong enough to break a neck, as seen in episode 10 of season 1. Speed.
There will be VFX that kind of speed up their movement, but they are honestly so creepy just to look at. Without any effects, they barely need any work.
Strength, endurance, and durability. Regained abilities such as sight and hearing if they were indeed lost. And in addition to that, being much enhanced, which is also inclusive of sense of smell. Basically all the commonly known senses enhanced. No necessity to sleep as we do, but rather they go into a state of energy conservation, lowering activity while remaining aware. Vision in darkness, ability to sense blood, thermal vision or heat vision in layman's terms, which connects with our night vision benefit.
This is it. That's the parasite. This is the organism that's infecting people. This is what we're fighting.
So it's just a stinger, a spinal column, and a brain.
No, not just any brain.
The hive mind, if it is indeed connected to the hive mind. For here, a Strigoi is controlled by a superiorly intelligent centralized mind, which can allow it to form into excellent collaborative strategies involving numerous Strigoi focused upon a specific mission or missions. This mental network connection now allows the Strigoi to be informed of a much larger spectrum of the current surrounding environment, though which can be disrupted by a specific utilization of lead. Also, they hone the family-seeking instinct in order to ensure survival and procreation. And all these are dependent on how long the Strigoi has existed in this form and further developed and adapted, especially its speed, the strength, and agility. Lack of emotion, hence they cannot be swayed by any psychological manner other than being baited. And they also have the zombie-ish benefits.
The tissue is necrotic.
Essentially, the host body remains practically dead, only enlivened by the infection and managing worm. Therefore, pain is no issue, nor is damage to the body unless affecting the vital organs. Hence, we see Strigoi being quickly immobilized when their throats and or proboscis and that connected new organ are severely severed or ripped out. Loss of a toe or a hand, no problem. And relentless drive. And keep in mind that the ancients have even more benefits, and we can discuss those in detail in another video if you wish. But for now, let's jump into the weaknesses of the Strigoi. First and foremost, the weaknesses that the god of this lore imposed on Azrael and all his descended forms as a sort of curse. Sunlight or UV rays, which break down the disease-infected flesh. Inability to cross moving water, linking to more biblical context now involving the two rivers that flowed from Sodom and Amorah, as they are called in the strain. Silver, which we discussed in the origin section, but now from a more scientific perspective because of its disinfecting properties which interfere with the disease's actions. And this is fact, simply because silver is less toxic to human cells than bacteria, and therefore can serve as an effective preventative. In short, it can be helpful in small doses, but not good in high. Though one has to consider now that silver is still not the safest metal to human biology, and therefore I find it overused in sci-fi and fantasy and horror against monsters. I suggest including these metals in your lore which are even less toxic and thus more logical. Surgical stainless steel, platinum, and titanium. Pure niobium, which seems to be the purest of all. Wouldn't that just make for that much of a cooler and more unique and original detail for your story? A bioweapon that can be targeted at the worms, such as using a chemical that disrupts communication among cells and may be transferable via the worm to other Strigoi. Gluttony, lacking the moderation of their predatory habits, which can lead to an extinction of their food supply, consequently leading to famine.
I believe this is the communication center of the Strigoi brain.
And once again, the hive mind,
And I'm never eating noodles again.
But only if they are not connected to it, if they lose connection to the master for whatever reason. The Strigoi will then remain fairly simple and not too collaborative with other Strigoi. They will only be driven by the worm's instinct to survive and therefore limited by its capabilities. As a result, being worm-brained, so not very intelligent, and much easier to hunt down. Disrupting communication using technology. As seen in episode 9 of season 3, the Strigoi can be left completely disembobulated when a disrupting signal is applied, which allows them to be easily driven by the single desire of feeding, and this can allow them to be easily baited, unless actively controlled by the master. The destruction of the head or spine, which again are heavily connected to the Strigoi vital organs. As with the mentioned metals, detoxifying chemicals, as we saw Satire can take advantage of to poison the lead Strigoi, Ichorst.
And now, the power level.
Shall we? 1. An earthworm. 5. A beast over a couple floors in height. And 10. The controller of time and space. I would have to say that the Strigoi of the strain have earned themselves a 3.5. The ability to outperform a common unskilled human, yet at level or below that of an experienced warrior. As we all know, humans can really range in level, especially when looking at fantasy. And now my overall appreciation of this Strigoi concept and design. I like the idea that the effective Strigoi is the product of the collaboration of 4 organisms: the worm, the microorganism or disease it releases, the host body, and the hive mind control of the master or ancient vampire. If this is indeed a correct or close analysis of what the lore writers originally envisioned. I always appreciate when fantasy or sci-fi writers really do their research when creating a new lore, and this was no exception. Keep in mind that I am not reviewing the series, the acting, directing, etc. Simply the monster concept of the common Strigoi and all that surrounds its fantastical existence. And they are without a doubt cool, terrifying creatures that have a bit more spice to them than just a mouthful of fangs. Also, as I am sure many of you out there can agree, it's nice to see vampires on the big screen again that instead of being attractive and maybe sparkly, are raw and scary predators above humanity in the food chain. In addition, I'm pleased with how far they went with the lore here, with the beginning with the corruption of Archangel Osriel, religion aside. I enjoyed that ancient path they went with, and it cleared up many things. And so now let's continue to the last portion of this analysis, the similar beasts out there. Let's begin with vampire/Dracula, but vampires in general, so no need to list every humanoid vampire ever created. Let's stick more to the specific similarities, such as the altered jaw structure or parasitic inner ruling, though not necessarily so similar as are the capillary worms themselves. So we have the aswang, which is a bit of a more complex creature that derives from Filipino folklore, where at times they feature a long tongue or proboscis that they use to feed on unborn children. Nosferatu, and all copies of it. And we have to bring significance to the fang structure, and how that just a little influenced a particular Strigoi. Vampires, but particularly the Reapers of Blade 2, Dark Seekers of I Am Legend, the Vampires of 30 Days of Night. And now we're starting to get in the weeds here with the similarities, but those vampires still retain a lot of that beastly nature, and maybe reaching even further the Chupacabra due to some of its odd appearances and proboscis feeding organ that leaves drained dead animals on the ground. The Strigoi of the actual legends, and if on that you may be interested in exploring the Moroi.
It was called the Shroud Eaters. The Shroud Eaters, great name. And it was because the corpses formed a bloody discharge full of bacteria that ate the shroud. And when they opened the coffins, they saw the teeth, and they thought the corpses got up and ate people through the shroud.
And there is some similarity to some ghoul concepts out there. Wizard's Shackle of Pathfinder, which is basically a puppet master worm. Nice. and just for the fun of it, the blood-drinking, shape-shifting, underground-dwelling, conspiracy theory reptilians. And of course, let us know if you find any other good similar beasts out there, and comment down below on what TV series monster you would like us to discuss next, even though we sort of cheated on this episode as the original Strigoi concept of the strain was in novel/literature form. Also, don't forget to join us in communities in the Facebook community and the community section here on YouTube for further discussion on the monsters we love, and you just may, or your name just may be featured in a video. Guys, until next time, thank you for watching all about the Strigoi of the strain here only at
World of Monsters.
Limitation. So the strain is the first time I can fully approach vampires. So it's a combination of the scientific and the gothic.
No necessity, 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 no necessity to sleep as we do.
This terrible disaster, it's really humankind.